Well, it's Africa Day today, and apart from its political meaning, it's also a day to celebrate the continent's diversity and unity. And this year, the theme is Our Africa, Our Future, an opportunity to reflect on successes, milestones and challenges faced by Africans. But you could see there at the cradle of humankind this morning, President Cyril Ramaphosa making his way inside the venue where he's expected to give that Africa Day commemoration keynote address. He's, of course, flanked by the Premier of Gauteng, that is Panyaza Lesufi, and also Zizi Kodwa, the Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture. You could see, of course, there, fun being had at Africa Day celebrations, but of course, many Africans coming and gathering together to celebrate this day. And today, the speech by Cyril Ramaphosa, the Republic of South Africa, very important, just in terms of South Africa expressing itself and its position in a continent that is alive with possibilities, even though there are many challenges still facing the continent. Now, you would know that in recent days, there have been reports coming that African leaders would assemble to try and mediate with the Ukraine and Russia conflict currently happening in Ukraine. Of course, assuming if the president will touch on that or not this Africa Day. However, equally important, of course, for the president to be in attendance and also just speak on South Africa's standing, being one of the key economies within the continent of Africa. A lot of beautiful faces and people dressed in their different African attires. We could see there's some of the Eswatini cultural material and clothes being worn. I've seen the Venda, a traditional attire being worn early on when my colleague Moloko Moloto was also speaking to some of those guests in attendance this morning. But you could see there, of course, singing and jubilation as Cyril Ramaphosa, the President of the Republic, enters into the venue. That's a cradle of humankind out in Krugersdorp, right here in Johannesburg, as those Africa Day celebrations continue. But the theme this year, Our Africa, Our Future, touching on the many challenges faced by the continent, understandably, but also what are the opportunities that lie when we look at, of course, digitization, technology, skills development, arts and culture also being one of them, given the fact that also art is represented today, particularly at this event. So hopefully the president will be touching on all those different facets that would contribute to assuring Africa's bright future. But all of those factors have to equally contribute to the AU's Agenda 2063. This is where, of course, all African nations have agreed to ensuring that certain themes have been tackled, certain challenges have been resolved, resolutions, interventions leading up to 2063, so that, of course, Africa can continue to enjoy a brighter future. Well, we'll, of course, continue bringing you those visuals. Reporter Moloko Moloto out for us. There he is, of course, trying to direct our cameramen just so that they could find their positioning for us this morning, as the president is expected to take the podium any moment now. And as soon as Moloko is stationed and ready to take us, we'll, of course, just to get in touch with him and find out what exactly he's hearing on the ground and what is happening from where he stands. And there is my colleague Moloko Moloto this morning. Malume, I could see there definitely jubilation, singing, dancing as President Cyril Ramaphosa made his way into the venue. I suppose any moment now he could be addressing the crowd.
Good morning, Rakhali Tumelo. Well, indeed, the cradle of humankind in Krugersdorp is certainly a hive of activity this morning. I'm sure you can see all these colorful people wearing their traditional regalia, Basotho, Amazulu, Emaswati, all cultural groups represented here. Of course, the purpose is to celebrate who we are, to celebrate our Africanness in our unique way. As the Minister Zizi Kodwa earlier said, the Minister of Sports and Culture, saying that our diversity either in terms of language, in terms of our cultural background. That is what defines who we are. And despite the challenges that this continent of Africa is grappling with, we still need to utilize this opportunity to celebrate our Africanness. And of course, as much as today it is the commemoration of the founding of the Organization of African Unity, a precursor of the African Union. Also, we understand that it was founded on this day in 1963. So it's a milestone, 60 years since the founding of the Organization of African Unity. The whole purpose was to unite Africans behind one purpose so that we are not disintegrated in terms of economic growth as well, and many other facets that define us as Africa. Of course, we are aware that in our continent, some parts of our continent are still plagued by wars. This is despite the fact that the African Union has also set targets to silence the guns by 2020. In some parts of the continent, in Sudan, we know that civilians are caught up in between the warring factions. And Minister Zizi Godwa earlier, when we spoke to him, indicating that despite all these challenges, we still need to understand that we are one. Perhaps let's listen to the Minister of Sports and Culture, Zizi Godwa, there.
Part of dealing with issues of immigration in the context of economic prosperity is to address economic conditions of different countries, so that people, there is no reason why people must leave their own country, because most of the country people who cross one way or another to other different countries, primarily as Aslam, these are economic Aslams, people who live because of their conditions in countries where they come from. So therefore, we must make sure that the Africa Trade Agreement addresses these issues of economic development and prosperity in different countries. And I think if you do that, we'll be actually less of a problem of immigration of large numbers of Africans who cross Mediterranean to Malta, to Italy, and to Europe.
Well, Moloko, of course, with South Africa being one of the largest economies in Africa, what can we expect from President Cyril Ramaphosa's address today, just in terms of observing and further celebrating Africa Day today?
Well, that is correct, Timelo. You would know that a lot of people move to several parts of the continent into South Africa. And in fact, we have always repeatedly heard, particularly from the Premier of Gauteng, the former Premier, I must say, David Makura, who was saying that annually there's about 250,000 people who flock to Gauteng as the center, the commercial center of not only South Africa, but Africa. But of course, we know that, for instance, the African Union itself has what it calls the Agenda 2063, and it's got flagship projects that it says it would want to attain by then. But perhaps maybe let's throw into the national anthem as it's now underway.
Thank you very much. You may be seated.
All right, of course, the program beginning at the cradle of humankind. This is where the Africa Day celebrations, official Africa Day commemorations with President Cyril Ramaphosa giving that keynote address. Well, you could see him there already in attendance. They've sung the South African national anthem, and that was the African Union anthem. This alongside Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture Zizi Kodwa and Premier Panyaza Lesufi. As soon as, of course, the president takes to the podium and addresses the nation, and the rest of the continent in extension will be sure to give you those live visuals.